early 1400 or early 1500. Let's start from Zambezi rivers. When you look at Zambezi areas, especially around Zambia's, there are Sotho people in Zambezi areas. In fact, they've been there before the arrival of Balozi and Sibitwan. They've been there, these people. There's a place in Zambia. It's called Musiwa Utunya. If you ask Bakwena people, Musiwa Utunya, if you ask Bahurutse bareke khabu ya mollo, meaning the flame of fire. So this place like Musiwa Utunya, it's actually might have named by Bahurutse because they are the one who deal with the Musiwa Utunya, because you know that we also have Katima Mollo next to, which is not far away, which is close to Namibia, close to Angola. It's called Katima Mollo, close to Namibia and Angola. Katima Mollo is another way. Now this Katima Mollo, it's about, as you know, that like Bahatla people price themselves as a Babina Khabuya Mollo. Khabuya Mollo is the flame of fire, the tip of flame of fire. Kiba Hurutse. They are part of Hurutse. Bakwena and the Bahurutse are related. Had a son, his name is Mutebele. He was a senior son of Muhurutse. And this Bahurutse person, they identify, because remember, the person who was right, people were ruling, or the South Africans were ruling Southern Africa before European come. It's Silas Molema who is Barolong. Silas Molema believed that Bahalaka ruled Southern Africa, and he wrote as somebody who's related to these people. So we don't know whether Barolong are Bahalaka, but it appears that Barolong are also Bahalaka. I will explain why I'm saying that Barolong are Bahalaka, are also part of this Bahalaka, because this is very interesting to see that a scholar or a medical doctor like Silas Molema will take this time to study this issue of South African civilization and argue in that South African built this civilization of gold that is found in South Africa. As you know, that Bahurutse people refer everybody from the north as Bakoni, which means if you're from north of one areas, Bahurutse refer you as Mukoni. Mukoni meaning people of the north. So like I said, Thomas Lowe argued that Bakwena and Bahurutse are related, which is correct. Because if you listen to the place like West Zambezi areas, western part of the Zambezi areas, place like I said, Katima Mollo, Musiwa Utunya. Botswana people have got a phrase that says Maru Hasipula, Musike Mollo. You can see these things are related to Botswana people. That the cloud is not a rain, the smoke is fire. We all know that, yeah, if you ask Bahatla or Bahurutse Ware, Katima Mollo, Marua Pula King, Bahabuya Mollo King, they will then be able to tell you that no, this is. Now, when you go to next to Zimbabwe, there is a place called Ramokhopane. This place appears in the Portuguese journals. Ramokhopane is a Tswana places next to Shashe. It appears in Portuguese journals. Can you believe it? Now, before and when you move around, you go to neighboring countries. The country that you find is South Africa. Boshashe, you go to Palabura. This is Bahalaka people. You go around. There are place in Venda next to Kruger National Park. It's called Thulamela. Thulamela, king. This is Tswana. It's a Tswana term which means sunset. When the sun sets, or to sleep quietly. In Setswana, Bariku Thulamela. So if you are close to Bahatla or Bakwena, you must ask these things that I'm telling you. Now, what does this mean to us? Actually, Morolong, Silas Molema was right. South African contributed to the gold that we see in South Africa, the mineral that we see, and the civilization that was built in South Africa were actually built by native South Africans before European comes. And we all know that when European come to Southern Africa, they tried to use spies. I think you know that there was a guy from they tried to use spies. And then one of the spies that was used was Francisco de Almeidas. The Almeida was killed by Khoisan in Cape Town, because the reason why the Portuguese wanted to enter South Africa, they failed to enter South Africa. Remember the issue of Vasco da Gama, who was traveling around Cape, and then who was able to do that. But Portuguese want to enter South Africa through Zambezi, so they failed. They were prevented by the Bahurutshe, of course, because Bahurutshe, Abakoni, they prevented them, people of the north. They want to enter through what they call Namibia. They were actually prevented by Barolong. As you know, that Barolong people are not what we think. Barolong people were the traders. They traded in the Kalanga Bay, known as Maputo Bay. I'll show you how do we know that Barolong traded in Maputo Bay. They take resources and minerals along with the group like Bapedi Baskukuna, who are Bahurutshe people and Abakhatla. They were trading there. It was the trading post. So Mozambique, the trade of Mozambique, identification of Mozambique as one of called strategic position in Zambezi and Limpopo valleys was actually designed by the Sotho groups. Now in Mozambique, there's a place in Mozambique called Sofala. The word Sifala comes from the Tswana word meaning a granary or a harbor. So if you're close to Botswana, you must ask them, what is Sifala? Sifala is a granary or a harbor. Now, in the same parts of these places where in Mozambique, where I'm trying to show you that, what I'm trying to show you is that in the Mozambique areas, there were actually northern Sothos, the Sotho Tswana people. Let me say Botswana. There were Botswana people who live in that areas. On top of that, there is a place in the eastern part of Mozambique where this place is called, I think the place that it's called Maruapula. In the district, next to Malema district, there's an entire river in Mozambique. It's called Malema. And there's an entire district. District is the area that called Malema district. The word Malema, as we already know, that Silas Molema already right. Who are though are part of Kalanga, probably the Ababirwa or Barolong. Silas Molema was right that this civilization that we see was done by. I understand that like I said earlier on, Silas Molema is a politician. Is to unite people. He boldly indicate in his writing that the civilization of Southern Africa were inspired by by South Africans. Because the book was about the civilization of South African people. One very amazing, Silas Molema wrote positively about Zulu people. Just like, unlike other authors, remember European authors in 17th century, 18th century, they were writing negative things about Zulu people. But Silas Molema convincingly write positively about the Nguni people, especially coastal people, the Zulu people. He described them as a very good people. And then Barolong people and Bahurutshe who are Bapedi, they traded in Mozambique. We explained the place, like if you go to Mozambique, you'll find the place like Sefala, which is a Sotho Tswana name, meaning a granary or harbor. You go to eastern parts of Mozambique, you'll find the place known in Malema districts. Next to Malema district, you find people like Mapula, Napula. Portuguese misspell it Napula. You find the place called Maruapula. As I indicated that if you find something like Maruapula, Kibakwena. Pula nala Kibakwena, yes. Pula nala Kibakwena Kibatswana. Napula Kimapula, mother of rain. Those places are Sotho Tswana were strategic position of Mozambique. Now it was occupied by the Sotho Tswana people traders. So they were based in South Africa, but they marked territories. It's in African society, you know that you can't put your flag into another man. You can't go and put your pole in another man. You only put that place if you've got power. And even Xitsonga languages, if you look at among Batsonga people, there are people called Baloi. Baloi. Baloi, Muloi. Yes, they are part of Roses. The Muloi is from Tswana people. And Xitsonga language known as Shangan. Within it, like Batsonga Bari, Niabula Xitsonga, Nestiva Xitsonga. So that's why I'm telling you that the Shona people, Shona languages was not a language of trade. The language of trade was the Sotho Tswanas. Now, Xitsonga languages, there's a concept, let's say, mitiro iabulabula. The word tiro, come from the Tswana word, tiro. Mutiro come from the Tswana word tirong. tiro, which means work. So Setswana influenced some Shangaan because the Tswana people were trading with Shangaan. They have to pass through Shangaan to go to set up a trading post in those Maputo Bay. Now, not only Maputo Bay, we go to, as you know, that in Swaziland, the pre-occupation, according to A.J. Bryant, in his book, The Zulu People as They Were, Before a White Man Comes, he argues that the Swaziland, people who live in Swaziland before the Swazi that we know today were people of Sotho origins. So the reason why the British have to crush Pedi people, because Pedi had interest. It was easy for them to trade with Barolong within the areas. Now, surprisingly, in the place next to Mozambique in Swaziland, there's a place called Usotho Rivers, the Great Usotho Rivers. It's also known as Lusotho Rivers. People who lived there were Sotho people. It's called Usotho or Lusotho. Usotho meaning from the Malawi Musotho, brown colors in Sesotho Saleboa. And then you get my point. So which means that you could see the language of trade here. And then you move to Namibia. There are also people there in Namibia who are Batswanas. Unfortunately, in Namibia, next to Katima Mullo, we've got about Lozi language that is spoken. Even inside Namibia, there are Batswana people who speak Tswana. The Batswana from Namibia are Barolong. Some of them were taken by Germans from Limpopo. There are people who used to live in the northwest part of Limpopo, and some of them northwest. They call Masitidi, Lisitidi one. So Masitidi are called, they are Hottentots. The European call them Hottentots. So if you look at this civilization, mining engineering of South Africa, you can see that the Sotho Tswana people were oldest. They are oldest because you go to Limpopo, Bo Phalaborwa, Bo Thabazimbi, Bompedi in Musina, Bomapungubie, these are the Sotho states. Now the question was asked, what do you think about Bavenda? Okay, Bavenda people have got different identities. We've got Bavenda people. Chivenda is influenced by more than 5 groups. Number 1, Chichewa. Number 2, Lingala. Number 3, Shona. But the majority of Chikukune, Bahurutse, who are Bahurutse. Now, how do we know that Basotho Baleboa, like Bapedi, people like Balobedu control Sesul? There are people like Chifularo. Those are not Shonas. Chifularo are not Shonas. Paswana are not Shonas. Ramaru are not Shonas. Now, actually, the Ra that you see in Venda languages, orthographies, was developed by Germans. So when Germany were doing orthography of Basotho Baleboa, they added Ra among Bavenda because they were Venda people that were actually northern Sothos. So that's what they did. So what do I mean here? The point I'm trying to make here, however, which is very important, is that although Mashona people have linked with Bavenda, but Chivenda is controlled by northern Sothos. Culturally, yes, it's like a Kilobedu, Basotho Bauapa, like Batlokwa, Baviras. They are under northern Sothos, not Shonas. Now, if you ask a Venda person, what do you call a head in Chivenda, he will tell you that the same thing that Basotho Baleboa call it. You ask a Venda person, what do you call a tongue? It's the same. It's different Shonas. You ask the Venda people, what do you call the teeth? Similar to what do you call when the Venda tradition, for example, Venda healing systems. If you go to Bapedi Baskukunene, you ask them Tobela. Tobela is a Pedi person, Kitobejane. So the Bapedi influence that things. You look at Mohali, Tobela Mohali, Ki Mohale ka Sotho, Mohale ka Setswana, Mohali in Chivenda. Now you also have things like traditional healers will take bones in Sotho Saleboa, Taula. They call it Taula. In Setswana, in Chivenda, it's called Ndaula. It's a northern Sotho, you can see it. And then if you look at Venda, people adopted Morundu. In Kilobedu, Moroto, Pulana Moroto, which is traditional healers, traditional initiation schools. Whereas this culture does not feature among Mashona people. There's a rain dance that is known among Bakwena. Bakwena ke baroka ba metsi a pula ne. It's called Dinaka. In Sotho sa Leboa, in Tshivenḓa it's called Chikona. In Botswana it's called Ditlhaka. It does not feature among Mashona people. Although there is a link between some vendors and Shonas, but because the proximity of Northern Sothos, Tshivenḓa is more likely going to be a Northern Sotho. Therefore, if we have to look at the influence of the Shona languages, which is actually, according to Silas Mulema, is the recent, Shona identity is the recent. And we look at Tshivenḓa languages. Tshivenḓa, or those who speak Tshivenḓa, will focus on survival of their own languages than going to join Shona languages. So because if you look at for example, Venda can speak Northern Sothos, Shona cannot speak Northern Sothos, and Shona language is only spoken in Zimbabwe. And whereas the Sotho-Tswana languages are spoken in Zambia, Namibia, Botswana, Makua tribe that we used to live in part of Bakwena, their totem is Kwena. Ke babina Kwena, Kwena ke pholofolo ya metsi ne. Ke moroga metsi ya pula. So they are actually among Bapedi. If you go to Bapedi or Paskukune, you ask Makua people, they will show you that we've got Makua people. Those Makua people used to live in Mozambique. They were integrated in Bapedi, Paskukune, Mahua or Makua. If you go to Basotho from Southern Sotho in Lesotho, you'll find those people, Makua people, and Matebele. Go to Lesotho, you look for Machobane. Machobane, you'll find them. Mandebele people. What I'm trying to say is that the Nguni people, although the term Kalanga comes from the Nguni place, Matebele, Bahurutshe, basically the Nguni and Sothos, they have got marriage alliance. That's the reason why you go to KwaZulu-Natal, among Zulu people, you find about Sotho Batlokwa. You go to Free State, you find the Xhosa and the Sotho live together. You go to Northern Cape, you find Xhosa and Tswanas. You go to Limpopo, you find Matebele people live with the Northern Sothos. You go to the place like Northwest, you find Xhosa and Tswanas. They've got marriage alliance. What the reason before, as you know, that Botswana were few privileged people to be exposed to Western education, whereby the missionaries, the first Bible was translated in Setswana in 1840s, where the book of Luke was the first one, as you know, is deal with the origin. And Silas Mulema pointed correct that the Karanga or the Kalanga people have got Semitic cultures. They actually traded with the Portuguese. He got it right. So you go to Mozambique, you look for evidence that whether Bakalanga, you go to Marua Pula in the Malema districts. What are you going to find? You're going to find the trading post. You go to Sifala. Sifala come from the Sotho-Tswana name. Sofala come from Sotho, which means granary or harbors. You go to Mozambique, like I said, you're going to find Usutu. You go to Swaziland, you're going to find place like Matsapa. Matsapa is Tswanas. You go to Boshashe, Boramokopane in Zimbabwe, Bokatima Mollo. All over around South Africa, you can see that you go to Lesotho, you find the Villa Villa. You go to Villa Villa in Lesotho,